Hold on for a second, because what you are experiencing right now is not just memory. It is not just a passing cloud of loneliness or one of those late-night thoughts you can easily explain away and forget by morning. Something about them, that specific person, that specific energy is rising again. You can feel it. It isn't loud, and it isn't always clear, but it is enough to disturb your peace. It is enough to make old emotions move in the depths of your psyche as if they never really died. You tried to call it random. You tried to tell yourself it was just a weak moment brought on by stress or a dream. But deep down, you know better. Some connections do not leave quietly. They do not obey the laws of time or the logic of the ego. They wait. They sit under the surface of your daily life like a hidden fire, smoldering in the dark. And when the time is right, when the internal or external conditions shift, they start breathing again. That is why their name can hit your chest out of nowhere, leaving you breathless in the middle of a crowded room. That is why a song, a street corner, a specific look in a stranger's eyes, or a vivid dream can suddenly feel loaded with a heavy, undeniable meaning. Here is the part you cannot ignore. When someone is truly gone from your system, emotionally, energetically, and psychologically, their weight fades. The grip loosens. They stop reaching into your body like this. But when the energy stays active, when the feeling keeps returning with force, it means something unfinished is still alive. Listen carefully, because this is where most people lie to themselves. They say they have moved on. They show the world a version of themselves that is productive, social, and healed. But maybe they did not move on at all. Maybe they just got better at carrying what still hurts. Maybe they learned how to stay busy, how to stay distracted, and how to look calm while something inside them kept waiting. If that is you, then stay with me. The sign you are looking for is not what you think it is. You did not heal the way you tell yourself you did. You simply arranged the pain so it would stop shouting. You organized it into neat little boxes. You hid it under routines, buried it beneath work, conversations, new interests, and forced smiles. You adopted all the little habits that help a person survive what they never truly faced. On the outside, it looked like peace. On the inside, it was a controlled silence. It was a trained numbness. And for a while, that seemed like enough. But silence is not the same as release. Just because the pain stopped speaking every day does not mean it disappeared. It means it learned how to wait. It learned how to hibernate until the defenses of the ego were thin enough for it to strike again. That is why certain nights feel heavier than they should. That is why your mind drifts back to them even when you are doing something completely ordinary. The strange part is not just that you think about them. It is how alive those thoughts feel. They do not come like dusty, faded memories from a distant past. They come with heat. They come with pressure. They come with an emotional charge that feels as if something in you has been touched from far away. That does not mean you are weak. It does not mean you are dramatic or stuck. It means that something inside your psychological architecture was never fully settled. People like to talk about closure as if it is a clean ending, a final sentence in a book, a door shutting with a satisfying click. But the inner world does not work like that. The soul does not care about neat words or brave speeches. It cares about what was lived, what was left hanging, and what was left unfinished. if their presence still feels close in moments that make no sense, if their memory still enters your body before it even enters your mind, then what you are dealing with is not overthinking. It is unfinished movement. And unfinished things do not stay quiet forever. The real disturbance is not that you miss them. It is that they seem to return in your mind with timing that feels almost deliberate. Strange hours, random days, moments when you should be fully present somewhere else, and yet, there they are again, not just remembered, but felt. This is what unsettles you, because it does not feel passive. It does not feel like a dead chapter you happen to reopen. It feels active. It feels like something underneath the level of thought is moving before your conscious mind can even catch up. Most people ignore that feeling. They call it nostalgia. They call it emotional weakness. But some memories do not repeat because you are broken. They repeat because something in you never reached the actual end of the experience. In psychology, we call this the Zeigarnik effect. The tendency for the human mind to remember uncompleted or interrupted tasks more easily than completed ones. Your connection was an interrupted task. It was a story that stopped mid-sentence. When that happens, the mind does not simply let go. It circles back again and again. It replays, it searches, it tries to complete what was interrupted so it can finally find rest. This is why the emotional loop stays alive long after the relationship, the contact, or the story itself seems finished to the outside world. If two people were caught in the same unfinished pattern, the feeling does not always vanish cleanly on both sides. It lingers. It builds pressure. It waits for the right opening in the psychic field. Ask yourself the questions you keep pushing away. Why now? Why are they louder in your mind today than they were a month ago? Why does their energy feel closer, even when there has been no physical contact? Why does your chest react before your logic does? Something has shifted. You may not have proof yet. You may not have a message, a call, or a visible sign. But the inner shift almost always comes first. Before a person returns physically, they return psychologically. That unease you feel, that low, restless pull, maybe that is not fear at all. Maybe it is recognition. Maybe something in you already knows the door is not as closed as you pretended it was. Here is where it gets more uncomfortable. What you are sensing may not only be them. It may be what they still represent inside you. They are a placeholder for unfinished emotion, unanswered questions, and truths you never had the courage to say. They represent parts of yourself that only came alive in that connection and never fully found a home after it ended. This is why the conflict feels so sharp. One part of you, the protective part, says, "Do not go back there. Remember the confusion. Remember how unstable it made you feel." But another part, a part that is quieter and more honest, does not fully reject the thought. That part still leans toward them. That part still wonders. That part still listens for the echo of their voice. That inner split is the real sign. Because when someone is truly gone from your emotional system, the fight ends. The tension between staying away and wanting more evaporates. There is only absence, a neutral, quiet absence. But absence is not what you are feeling. You are feeling friction. You are feeling a mental push and pull, a subtle war between self-protection and a deep buried desire. The mind does not stir real attachment without a trigger. It does not light up buried emotion unless something, somewhere, started moving again. You might catch yourself imagining contact, playing out scenes in your head you haven't visited in years. That is not just sentiment, that is activation. Once something becomes emotionally active again, it begins shaping your thoughts, your dreams, and your mood. The deeper truth is not only that they might return, it is that something in you is becoming ready for that return. Not openly, of course, not in a way you would proudly admit to your friends. On the surface, you still say no. You still repeat the story that protects you. You remind yourself how badly it hurt. But underneath that, something is softening. The anger is not as sharp as it used to be. The blame is not as clean. The picture of them is changing. You are starting to remember them as a human being, not just as the monster or the person who hurt you. Once your inner picture of someone changes, your emotional door changes with it. You become more available, even if you don't mean to. You become more receptive to the possibility you once swore you would never allow again. 1. Reduced resistance. You stop fighting the thought of them the second they appear. 2. Mixed emotions. The pain becomes mixed with curiosity. 3. Somatic shifts. Your body stops tensing up and starts leaning in. 4. Psychological availability. You stop looking for reasons to stay angry and start looking for reasons to understand. This reopening is rarely loud. It happens quietly, and once it happens, the connection is no longer sleeping. It is active again. This is why random reminders start to feel more intense. This is why dreams feel too real. Your awareness is beginning to notice every echo of the connection because you are finally tuned back into that frequency. Maybe the hardest part to admit is that a part of you does not want the feeling to stop. Because if the feeling stops, then the possibility stops too. And if the possibility stops, you may finally have to accept that nothing more is coming. So instead, you stay half open, half defended, half hoping. This state is powerful because it invites return. It allows the idea of the connection to keep living inside you. But what makes this even more intense is the realization that the connection was never just about them. It was about who you became when you were with them. That is the part few people are honest enough to face. You did not only lose a person, you lost a version of yourself. A version that felt more alive, more seen, more exposed, more emotionally real. Maybe that version of you was softer. Maybe it was wilder. Maybe it was more hopeful or even more reckless. But when they left, that version of you did not leave cleanly. It was pushed down. It was replaced by a version that is more guarded, more controlled, and more careful. You survived. You adapted. But in that adaptation, something vital went quiet, and now that quiet part is waking up. That is why the return of their memory feels bigger than just a thought of an ex-partner or an old friend. It is about touching that lost version of yourself again. You are drawn to them because you are drawn to what they unlock in you. The openness, the hunger, the emotional truth you cannot fake with anyone else. When a person becomes tied to parts of you that remain unfinished, they stop being just a person. They become a symbol. They become a key to rooms in yourself you have kept locked for a long time. Distance and time do not erase a key's ability to fit a lock. You can go years without contact and still feel the circuit light up when something touches the right nerve. Their absence can feel present because what they represent in you never fully disappeared. It just waited, And when something waits that long, it does not return gently. It comes back with pressure. It shakes the story you built about being fine. It exposes the weak spots in the identity you created after the loss. Suddenly, the version of yourself that looked stable starts feeling less certain. You realize you were not as detached as you claimed. You were not as free as you wanted others, and maybe yourself, to believe. That realization is terrifying. It should be. It reveals that you never truly let go. You just learned how to live around the attachment. There is a big difference between distance and resolution. Letting go is not about how many miles are between you or how many months have passed since you last spoke. Letting go is resolution. And if resolution never happened, if the why was never answered, if the pain was never integrated, then the bond does not disappear. It circulates under the surface. It waits for the moment your defenses weaken enough for it to rise again. And your defenses are weakening. You can feel it in the softness replacing your anger. You can feel it in the way your thoughts return to them more easily. This is not a failure. It is exposure. It is the collapse of the walls you built to keep the unfinished out. Once those walls crack, the emotional current starts flowing again. Signs the current is flowing. Synchronicity, thinking of them and then seeing a reminder immediately after. Vivid dreaming, meeting them in your sleep in ways that feel more real than your waking life. Intrusive thoughts, their name or face appearing when you are focused on something unrelated. Somatic pull, a physical sensation in your heart or gut when they are mentioned. If the circuit is firing in you, you have to ask the question you have been avoiding. If the door opens again, are you truly ready for what walks through it? The fantasy of return is easy. The real return is not. The fantasy lets you imagine new outcomes without facing old patterns. It tells you that this time, it will all make sense. It tells you the pain will finally have a purpose. But reality is harder. Reality asks what has actually changed in you, not what you say has changed, but what has fundamentally shifted in your reactions, your needs, and your blind spots. If the old patterns are still alive, then the return will not save you. It will only test you. It will expose every place where you still confuse intensity with meaning. Every place where you still want emotional chaos to be proof of destiny. One part of you pulls back because you know how powerful this can become. You know how fast one message or one look could wake up everything you worked so hard to control. But another part wants it anyway. Not because it is wise, but because unfinished things create their own gravity. They keep calling for meaning. They keep asking to be lived through one more time, as if maybe this time the story will finally reveal what it was trying to teach. Sometimes you do not want the person back as much as you want the pain to finally make sense. You want the confusion to lead somewhere. You want the emotional cost to give you something more than just an empty ending. That longing for meaning can keep a bond alive long after the facts say it should be gone. The strongest sign is still not something they are doing on the outside. It is something happening in you. The emotional charge is changing shape. The story you told yourself about them is being rewritten from the inside out. This is the shift that makes reconnection possible. People do not always return because of timing on the outside. Sometimes they return because something in your inner world can receive them again. Whether you notice it or not, you are becoming more open, slowly, quietly, and perhaps dangerously. You are re-entering the emotional state where they can matter again. This is why your mind revisits moments with more softness. Why old scenes now feel sad instead of bitter. Why your body reacts with longing where it once reacted with anger. Emotional readiness often arrives long before conscious permission. And once it arrives, it starts changing how you see everything. Even the past begins to look different. Not because the past changed, but because you changed in relation to it. This is the moment when many people tell themselves they are just reflecting or processing. But listen closely. Waves do not usually carry this much structure unless something deeper is pulling them. If the name keeps echoing, if the absence keeps feeling strangely alive, then something in you is not closing down. It is opening up. And once that opening begins, the question stops being whether they are coming back. The question becomes, what part of you is making space for them? If that question stings, good. It should. Buried truth always hurts when it first reaches the surface. You have been acting like this is about a person returning, but it goes deeper. It is about the unfinished part of you getting louder. It is about that tight feeling in your chest when their memory appears. The reason it hurts so much is that they reflected things in you that you did not fully understand at the time. They reflected your need to be chosen, your fear of being left, your hunger to feel deeply known. They did not create those things, but they activated them. And when they left, those parts of you were left exposed. That is why the pain was never only about losing them. It was about what their absence revealed, the emptiness, the unmet needs, and the places in you that still felt incomplete. Most people call this missing someone, but that is too small a phrase for such a large experience. Without them, you had to become someone more controlled. You had to adapt. But now, that lost intensity is rising again. That is why the split inside you feels so exhausting. Version A says, "It is over, let it die. Protect your peace." Version B says, "It never ended. Be honest. Look at the fire. Both feel real. Both have evidence. Both are fighting for control of your future. This does not mean you are unstable. It means you are in a deep archetypal conflict. This kind of conflict cannot be solved by suppression. It demands a real answer. That answer may involve them, but it may also involve finally facing yourself without all the distractions you use to survive. Unresolved experiences repeat because the mind wants meaning. It wants to know why something had so much power over you. It brings the feeling back. It puts the connection in front of you again. It asks the old questions in new ways. If the person actually returns, or even if the chance of return becomes real, it will not just be about romance or timing. It will be a confrontation with the truth you avoided. It will be a confrontation with the emotions you did not let yourself feel fully. It will be a confrontation with the patterns you kept calling love, when they may have also been fear, dependency, or a hunger for repair. You will not meet them as the person you were before. You will meet them as someone more aware, more exposed, and hopefully more emotionally honest. Clarity is not comfortable. It is often sharper than pain because it removes excuses. It ends the luxury of saying, "I do not know why this still has power over me." You do know, or at least you are starting to know. And once you know, you cannot go back to innocent confusion. Ask yourself this: if the chance comes, do you want closure or do you want continuation? Do you want peace or do you want to feel it all again? Be careful here. The answer may reveal more about your wounds than about your love. Maybe you do not actually want them back in the simple way you have been telling yourself. Maybe what you really want is the self you lost when they left, the version of you that felt open, wanted, and emotionally expanded. But here is the hard truth. If they return, they cannot give you that version back. You have to become that person again on your own terms. You cannot depend on them to be the key to your own locked rooms. That is what you have been avoiding. Because fantasy is easier than reconstruction. It is easier to imagine their return fixing something than to rebuild the broken parts of yourself with no guarantee and no dramatic ending. Healing asks for more than a return to the past. Real change asks for a confrontation with the present. If they come back, their return will not save you. It will reveal you. It will reveal every hidden expectation, every fear you never named, and every old pattern waiting for another chance to repeat itself. The biggest event is not their return. It is your readiness to see clearly. It is your willingness to stop romanticizing what destroyed your peace. It is your commitment to stop confusing intensity with truth. Maybe the bond was real. Maybe the connection mattered deeply. Maybe the timing was wrong and the ending was unfinished. All of that can be true. But another truth can sit beside it. You are still responsible for what happens if the door opens again. The disturbance you feel is an invitation. It is a call to look at the fire, to acknowledge the weight, and to finally decide if you are ready to finish the story. Not by going back, but by moving through it. The inner shift has already happened. The door is no longer locked. But before you step through, look at your own hands. Look at what you are carrying. Because this time, the story is not about them. This time, the story is about you.